The letter sat on my kitchen counter like a coiled snake. Plain white envelope, no return address, just my husband's name written in precise, measured strokes. I'd found it mixed in with our regular mail, and something about those careful letters made my stomach clench. I'm Vivian, and until this moment, I thought I knew exactly who I was. Wife, daughter-in-law, former marketing executive turned reluctant housewife. Living with my in-laws wasn't my idea of domestic bliss, but I'd made my peace with it. Or so I thought. My fingers traced the edge of the envelope. Daniel wouldn't be home for hours, and Lorraine, my mother-in-law, was upstairs doing whatever she did to maintain her iron grip on this household. The temptation to open it grew with each passing second. "Something interesting in the mail, dear?" Lorraine's voice cut through my thoughts. She stood in the doorway, perfectly coiffed as always, watching me with those hawk-like eyes. "Just sorting through bills," I said, sliding the envelope beneath a stack of junk mail. "Nothing exciting." "Hmm." She glided across the kitchen, heels clicking against the tile. "You know, a good wife doesn't keep secrets from her husband." "No secrets here, Lorraine. Just trying to organize things before Daniel gets home." She reached for the coffee pot, her wedding ring catching the light. "Such a dedicated wife you've become. Who would have thought?" The way she said it made my skin crawl. I busied myself with wiping down the already spotless counter, fighting the urge to snap back. 3 years of living under her roof had taught me the futility of direct confrontation. Later that night, after dinner and dishes and the usual dance of forced pleasantries, I finally got my hands on the letter again. Daniel was in the shower, and I'd retreated to our bedroom, heart pounding as I carefully opened the envelope. The words hit me like a physical blow. "Your wife isn't who you think she is. Ask her about Marcus Bennett and the late nights at the office. Ask her why she really quit her job. The truth will break your heart, but you deserve to know." My hands shook as I read it again. Marcus, Daniel's childhood friend, my former colleague. We'd worked together on projects, nothing more. But someone had twisted that into something ugly, something that could destroy everything. A soft knock at the door made me jump. "Vivian?" It was Evelyn, Lorraine's mother-in-law, her voice warm with concern. "May I come in?" I stuffed the letter under my pillow. "Of course." Evelyn entered, her weathered face kind but knowing. At 84, she saw more than anyone gave her credit for. "I couldn't help but notice you seemed troubled at dinner." "I'm fine," I said automatically, then caught myself. "Actually, no, I'm not fine at all." She sat beside me on the bed, her presence somehow both comforting and unsettling. "Someone's trying to hurt you, aren't they?" The question hung in the air between us. Before I could answer, Daniel's voice carried up from downstairs. "Mom, have you seen my gray tie?" "I'll help him look," Evelyn said, patting my hand. "But remember, dear, in this house, walls have ears and shadows have eyes. Be careful who you trust." She left me there, clutching a poison pen letter and wondering if my own mother-in-law could really hate me enough to destroy my marriage. But as I heard Lorraine's laugh floating up from below, followed by her sugary sweet, "Daniel, darling, let me help you with that," I knew in my gut who was behind this. The game was on, and I refused to be the only one getting hurt. The second letter arrived during Sunday brunch, this time slipped under our bedroom door. I found it while everyone else was downstairs, their voices drifting up through the floorboards like a distant radio play. My hands trembled as I read, "Ask your precious wife about the hotel receipts. Ask her why she deletes her text messages. Your mother tried to warn you." I crumpled the paper, fury rising in my throat. 3 days had passed since the first letter, and I'd watched Lorraine work her magic. Little comments at dinner about how Marcus had always been such a devoted friend. Meaningful glances when Daniel mentioned staying late at work. Each word a carefully placed landmine. "Everything all right up here?" Daniel appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. "Mom's wondering where you disappeared to." "I'm sure she is," I thought. "Just needed a moment." I forced a smile, shoving the letter into my pocket. "Your mother's stories about her garden club can be a bit overwhelming." He crossed the room, pulled me close. "I know she can be intense, but she means well." If only you knew. I buried my face in his shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent. Daniel, there's something. Darling. Lorraine's voice preceded her up the stairs. The quiche is getting cold. I pulled away from Daniel, catching the flash of satisfaction in Lorraine's eyes when she saw us separate. She'd perfected the art of interruption. Coming, Mom, Daniel called, then kissed my forehead. We'll talk later? But later never came. Lorraine orchestrated the entire afternoon, keeping us occupied with family photos and stories that always seemed to circle back to her role as the perfect mother, wife, keeper of family harmony. That evening, I found Evelyn in the garden, tending to her roses. She looked up as I approached, her weathered hands steady among the thorns. 2 letters now, she said without preamble. I saw her slipping this morning's under your door. My heart skipped. You saw? Lorraine's not as subtle as she thinks. Evelyn snipped a dead bloom. She pulled the same tricks with me years ago. Anonymous notes suggesting Robert was unfaithful. Whispered rumors about my past. She wanted control of the house, you see. Wanted me gone. What did you do? I stayed. She met my eyes. Some battles aren't won by fighting, dear. They're won by surviving. A door slammed somewhere in the house. Through the kitchen window, I could see Lorraine on the phone gesturing animatedly. My stomach turned as I recognized the name she was saying. Marcus. She's calling our friends now, I said, spreading her poison. Then perhaps it's time to let her poison work against her. Evelyn handed me a rose, its petals deep red against my pale skin. I've kept quite a collection of Lorraine's little schemes over the years. Letters, receipts, recorded conversations. Insurance, I called it. Never thought I'd need it. I stared at her, understanding dawning. You've been gathering evidence? For 30 years. She smiled, but there was steel beneath the grandmotherly warmth. The question is, what will you do with it? Before I could answer, Daniel's voice cut through the evening air. Vivian, phone call. It's Marcus. Lorraine appeared behind him in the doorway, her face a mask of concerned motherly worry. Darling, you're looking quite flushed. Is everything all right? I met her gaze, saw the challenge there. She thought she had me cornered, that this call from Marcus, which she'd no doubt orchestrated, would be the final push to break me. Everything's fine, I said, my voice steady. Actually, I've been meaning to invite Marcus over for dinner. It's been too long since we've all been together, hasn't it? As a family? The flash of uncertainty in Lorraine's eyes was worth every moment of pain she'd caused. She hadn't expected me to push back, to turn her weapon into my shield. What a lovely idea, Evelyn said, her voice carrying clearly across the garden. I have so many old stories to share, so many interesting things I've saved over the years. Lorraine's smile froze just for a moment, but it was enough. I saw it. Evelyn saw it, and now we both knew. The game was changing. I found the credit card statements in Robert's study while searching for more of Lorraine's letters. They spilled from a drawer left carelessly open, a cascade of red numbers and past due notices. My hands shook as I scanned the documents. Luxury purchases, spa treatments, and something else that made my blood run cold. Regular payments to a private investigator. Marcus arrived for dinner exactly on time, looking uncomfortable in his pressed shirt. Lorraine swooped in before I could greet him, steering him toward the dining room with practiced grace. Marcus, darling, tell us about that new project you're working on. She poured wine with a steady hand. The one keeping you at the office so late. I watched Daniel's expression tighten. The trap was obvious. Too obvious. But then Lorraine reached for her purse, and I saw something that made my heart stop. A familiar cream-colored envelope, identical to the ones I'd been receiving. Actually, Marcus said, clearing his throat, I wanted to discuss something else. Vivian, those marketing reports you handled before leaving, there are some irregularities. Lorraine's hand jerked, wine sloshing over the rim of her glass. Surely this isn't the time. Financial discrepancies, Marcus continued, meeting my eyes. Large sums being redirected to personal accounts. The audit team is very interested. The room went silent. Robert looked up from his plate, fork frozen halfway to his mouth. What sort of discrepancies? Nothing that can't be explained. Lorraine cut in smoothly. I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding. More wine, anyone? But I'd seen the flash of panic in her eyes. The pieces clicked together. The investigator, the missing money, the desperate need to discredit me before I could discover her secret. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, I have some interesting bank statements right here. Would you like to explain them, Lorraine? She knocked over her water glass, but I saw it for what it was, a diversion. As everyone jumped up to help, her hand slipped into her purse again. Don't, I said quietly. Unless you want me to read those letters you've been writing. The ones in your handwriting, matching the anonymous notes about me and Marcus. Daniel's head snapped up. What letters? Vivian is confused, Lorraine said, but her voice wavered. She's been under such strain lately. Show them. Evelyn's voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, holding a thick manila envelope. Show them everything, Lorraine. The letters, the bank statements, the investigator's reports. Or shall I? Lorraine's facade cracked. You don't understand. I had to protect this family. She was going to ruin everything. By discovering your gambling debts? Robert's voice was deadly quiet. Or by exposing how you've been stealing from our accounts? The room spun with accusations and revelations. Daniel stood frozen between his mother and me, his world unraveling with each new disclosure. But it was Marcus who delivered the final blow. The marketing irregularities weren't Vivian's, he said. They were traced to an external account. Your account, Lorraine. You've been embezzling from the company for years. She lunged for her purse, but I was faster. The letters spilled across the table, dozens of them, all in her distinctive handwriting, all designed to destroy me before I could expose her. I trusted you, Daniel whispered. How could you do this to Vivian? To all of us? Lorraine's mask finally shattered. Everything I did for this family. To maintain our position, our respect. By destroying mine? I asked softly. By trying to convince your son I was unfaithful? I needed you gone, she spat. You were getting too close, asking too many questions. I couldn't let you. Enough. Robert's voice cracked like a whip. Enough, Lorraine. It's over. The silence that followed was deafening. In it, I could hear the death of pretense, the collapse of carefully constructed lies. But as I watched Lorraine's world crumble, I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow understanding of what desperation could drive someone to do. Daniel reached for my hand under the table, and I knew this was just the beginning. The truth was out, but its aftermath would reshape us all. The morning after our disastrous dinner, I found Lorraine in the kitchen, calmly making coffee as if nothing had happened. Her composed facade only cracked when she saw the manila envelope in my hands. Evelyn's collection of evidence spanning 3 decades. You've won, she said flatly. What more do you want? I set the envelope on the counter between us. I want to understand why. All these years of manipulation, the lies, the money. You think you understand anything about family? She turned, her fingers white-knuckled around her coffee cup. About sacrifice? I built this life brick by brick. Everything perfect, controlled, safe. Then you arrived with your questions and your career ambitions, threatening to tear it all down. Mom? Daniel's voice made us both freeze. He stood in the doorway, looking older somehow, worn. I just got off the phone with the bank. They're launching a formal investigation. The coffee cup slipped from Lorraine's hands, shattering on the floor. Neither of us moved to clean it up. Daniel, sweetheart, she started, but he cut her off. Don't. He crossed to the counter, picked up the envelope. I need to know everything. No more lies. I watched his face as he read, each page bringing fresh pain. Bank statements showing systematic theft from family accounts. Letters to friends and colleagues spreading vicious rumors about me. Documentation of her gambling debts, hidden behind a wall of respectability. There's more, I said quietly. Marcus sent over the company audit files this morning. Lorraine's head snapped up. You can't. $2 million, I continued, forcing myself to meet Daniel's eyes. Embezzled over 5 years, they're pressing charges. The silence that followed was devastating. Daniel braced himself against the counter, his shoulders shaking. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Why didn't you come to me? To any of us? I couldn't show weakness, Lorraine said. This family needs truth. Daniel's fist came down hard on the counter. We needed a mother, not a puppet master. Robert appeared in the doorway, his face grave. The police are here. Everything happened too quickly after that. Officers reading rights, Lorraine's quiet dignity crumbling as they led her away. I found myself in our bedroom, mechanically packing a bag, when Evelyn appeared. You're leaving? She asked, though it wasn't really a question. Just for a few days. Daniel needs space to process everything, and I folded the same shirt for the third time, unable to finish the thought. And you're worried you've become what you fought against, she finished. That in exposing Lorraine's manipulation, you've manipulated everyone yourself. My hands stilled. Haven't I? There's a difference between justice and revenge, dear. The question is, which one were you really after? Before I could answer, Daniel appeared in the doorway. Don't go, he said. Please. I looked at the half-packed bag, at Evelyn's knowing smile as she slipped away, at my husband's haunted eyes. I don't want to make things worse. You didn't make this mess. He crossed the room, took the shirt from my hands. Mom did, and now we need to decide what kind of family we want to be. Together. The word hung between us like a promise and a question. Downstairs, I could hear Robert talking with the police, his voice breaking as he described years of deception. The foundation of our family was cracking, but maybe that's what we needed, to break apart before we could rebuild. Together, I agreed, but added, But Daniel, there's something else you need to know. Something about why I really left my job last year. His face tensed, preparing for another blow. But this truth was different, one that might finally free us both from the web of lies we'd been living in. I reached for my old work laptop, buried in the closet for months. It's time you saw what I found in the company files. About your mother, yes, but also about your father's business partners, about why Lorraine was really so desperate to keep me quiet. The truth would hurt, but silence had hurt us more. It was time to tear down the last walls of pretense, whatever the cost. Robert's 60th birthday party loomed like a gathering storm. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the elaborate cake I'd ordered, the one meant to be my peace offering, my way of proving to the family that I could be the daughter-in-law Lorraine never thought I was. She's being released on bail tomorrow morning. Daniel's words cut through my thoughts. He leaned against the doorframe, tie loosened, looking exhausted. Just in time for the party. Of course she is. My laugh came out bitter. Heaven forbid Lorraine Mitchell miss a chance to maintain appearances. The laptop sat between us on the counter, its screen still showing the damning evidence. Not just of Lorraine's crimes, but of Robert's business partner's involvement in a scheme that made her embezzlement look trivial. The truth we hadn't yet shared with him. We have to tell him, I said, before she comes home and spins another web of lies. It's his birthday, Vivian. The whole family will be here. Exactly. Perfect timing for... The kitchen door swung open. Evelyn entered, her face grave. Robert's on the phone with Lorraine's lawyer. She's claiming you planted the evidence. My hands gripped the counter. What? She's saying you orchestrated everything, the audit, the investigation, all of it, to destroy her. That you're trying to take control of the family business. Daniel's phone buzzed. He checked it, his face darkening. Marcus just got served with a cease and desist order. The company's lawyers are backing off the investigation. The room spun. All our careful plans, the evidence we'd gathered, the truth we'd fought to expose. Lorraine was dismantling it all from her jail cell. The party, Evelyn said suddenly. Everyone who matters will be there. The board members, the partners, the family friends. One last grand performance for Lorraine Mitchell. I looked at the cake, its perfect frosting suddenly seeming obscene. Unless. Unless what? Daniel asked. But I could see in his eyes he already knew. I opened the laptop again, pulled up the files I'd kept hidden for months. Unless we give them a different kind of show. One where everyone's secrets come out at once. It would destroy them, Daniel whispered. My father's reputation, the company, everything. They destroyed themselves, Evelyn said quietly. We're just turning on the lights. The doorbell rang. Early guests arriving for the party preparations. Daniel straightened his tie, the weight of decision heavy in his movements. Do it, he said finally. All of it. I'm tired of living in shadows. I nodded, but as he left to greet the guests, Evelyn caught my arm. Are you sure you're ready for what comes next? This isn't just about Lorraine anymore. She was right. In my pursuit of justice against Lorraine, I'd uncovered a rot that went deeper than family drama. The company's illegal dealings, Robert's willful ignorance, the web of lies that had enriched them all while destroying others. It was bigger than our personal vendetta now. The sound of laughter drifted in from the living room. Soon the house would be full of people wearing masks of civility, hiding decades of deceit. And tomorrow, Lorraine would walk free, ready to reclaim her throne. I touched the laptop's power button, feeling the weight of everything it contained. What's that thing you told me about karma, Evelyn? That it's not about revenge, she said, watching me carefully. It's about restoration of balance. More voices joined the growing chorus in the other room. Soon Robert would cut his cake, make his speech, accept congratulations from the very people who'd helped build his empire on fraud. Then let's restore some balance, I said, and began to type. The party would start in an hour. The cake would be served, speeches made, photos taken. And somewhere between the first toast and the final goodbye, years of carefully constructed lies would come crashing down. I just hoped Daniel could forgive me for what I was about to do to his family's legacy. Lorraine's entrance silenced the room. She swept in wearing cream silk, not a hair out of place, as if she hadn't spent the previous night in a jail cell. The party guests parted before her like waves, their whispered conversations dying mid-sentence. I stood by the cake table, my finger hovering over the send button on my phone. One press and every document, every piece of evidence would go to the press. The police, the board members, the nuclear option. Darling. Lorraine's voice carried across the room as she approached Robert. I wouldn't have missed this for the world. Daniel caught my eye from across the room, a silent question in his gaze. I nodded slightly, watching as he moved toward the audiovisual setup we'd prepared. Before we cut the cake, Lorraine announced, commanding attention effortlessly, I have something to say. She turned to face the crowd, tears glistening perfectly in her eyes. My family has been through a terrible ordeal, thanks to certain accusations. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Company lawyers are here. They know. But today, Lorraine continued, we celebrate not just my husband's birthday, but the triumph of truth over malice. The projector hummed to life behind her. This was our moment. Our carefully orchestrated exposure of decades of fraud and manipulation. But as I looked at Daniel's face, at Robert's proud smile, at the gathering of innocent people about to have their lives shattered, my finger froze over the button. Lorraine saw my hesitation. Her smile widened. In fact, I have an announcement to make. The room shifted as two men in suits entered, followed by police officers. Not part of our plan. Not part of anything we'd prepared for. Mrs. Carter, one of the suits said, approaching me. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of corporate espionage and attempted extortion. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. Lorraine's voice cut through the shocked murmurs. I tried to protect this family from her schemes, but some people simply cannot be trusted. That's not true, I started, but the officer was already reading my rights. Daniel moved toward me, but Robert caught his arm, whispering something urgent in his ear. The evidence. Evelyn's voice cracked through the chaos. Show them. Has been corrupted. Lorraine interrupted smoothly. Manufactured by a desperate woman trying to destroy this family. The real evidence shows quite a different story. I watched in horror as she produced a familiar-looking laptop. My laptop, but not the one I'd left in the kitchen. This one had been tampered with, its contents altered to tell a very different story. Check her phone, Lorraine suggested to the officers. I believe you'll find everything you need there. But my phone lay shattered on the floor where I'd dropped it. Its screen black, the evidence locked away or possibly already deleted by whatever digital sleight of hand Lorraine had orchestrated. Daniel finally broke free from his father's grip. This isn't right, he began, but stopped short as Robert stepped forward. Son, he said quietly, we have proof that your wife has been attempting to manipulate company records for months. The board has already reviewed it. The handcuffs felt cold against my wrists. Through the blur of tears, I saw Marcus being escorted out by the other officers, his face grim. Evelyn stood frozen, her carefully gathered evidence now worthless against Lorraine's masterful countermove. I did warn you, dear, Lorraine whispered as they led me past her. Some battles aren't worth fighting. The last thing I saw before they took me away was Daniel's face, confused, betrayed, angry, as Robert showed him something on his phone. Whatever doctored evidence they had, it was enough to make my own husband doubt me. The birthday cake sat forgotten on the table, its cheerful message mocking me as the officers led me through the door. Here's to truth and family. I'd thought I was playing chess, but Lorraine had been playing a different game entirely, and she'd just checkmated me in front of everyone who mattered. The holding cell was cold, but Lorraine's smile was colder as she sat across from me, separated by bulletproof glass. 3 days since the party, and she'd finally deigned to visit. I brought you something. She slid a manila envelope through the slot. Inside were divorce papers, Daniel's signature already in place. My hands shook, but I didn't open them. Why are you here? To offer you a deal. Sign these, walk away quietly, and all charges disappear. She leaned forward, perfectly manicured nails tapping the glass. Otherwise, the door buzzed. Daniel walked in, followed by Evelyn and, surprisingly, Robert. Lorraine's composure cracked for just a moment. What are you doing here? She hissed at Robert, showing them what I found in your private safe. He placed a USB drive on the counter. The real records, the ones you thought I was too stupid to find. Lorraine's face went ash white. Robert, don't play it, Daniel said quietly. The guard brought in a laptop. The video started playing. Lorraine in her office, methodically doctoring company records, making calls about surveillance on me, orchestrating the entire scheme. Turn it off, Lorraine commanded, but her voice had lost its authority. There's more, Evelyn said, producing a familiar cream-colored envelope. The original template for those anonymous letters you sent. Found it in your desk drawer, right where you always kept your special stationery. You broke into your house? I interrupted. Like you broke into my life? My marriage, my career? I protected this family. Lorraine slammed her hand against the glass. Everything I did was to keep us safe, to keep our status, to keep your control. Robert cut in. The gambling debts, the embezzlement, the manipulation. It was all about control. Daniel stepped closer to the glass. The police have everything now, Mom. The real evidence, Marcus's testimony, your private accounts. You wouldn't, Lorraine whispered. I'm your mother. You're a stranger. Daniel's voice cracked. And you tried to destroy the woman I love. Lorraine's facade finally shattered. She lunged at the glass, all pretense of dignity gone. She'll ruin everything. She'll change everything, just like she changed you. No, Lorraine, I said quietly. You did that yourself. The guard appeared. Mrs. Mitchell, the detectives are ready for you. As they led her away, she turned back one last time. I only wanted what was best for this family. No, Evelyn said. You wanted what was best for yourself. There's a difference. The divorce papers still sat untouched on the counter. Daniel picked them up, tore them in half. "The company lawyers are withdrawing all charges," Robert said. "And I've called an emergency board meeting. It's time for some changes." "Changes?" I asked. "Starting with new leadership." He looked at Daniel. "If you're ready." Daniel took my hand through the slot in the glass. "We're ready, together." The guard returned with release papers. As I gathered my belongings, Evelyn touched my arm. "You know she won't go quietly," she warned. "Even from jail, Lorraine will try to fight this." "Let her," I said. "Some battles are worth fighting." Outside, the morning sun felt different somehow. Cleaner. Daniel wrapped his arm around me as we walked to the car, past reporters already gathering for the story of the Mitchell family's fall from grace. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for doubting, even for a moment." "We all doubted," I said. "That was her power, but not anymore." Robert cleared his throat. "The house will be quiet without her." "Good," Evelyn said firmly. "We've had enough drama for several lifetimes." As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Lorraine being led to another police car, her cream silk replaced by orange jumpsuit. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her gaze. Fear. The game was over. And this time, truth had won. The Mitchell house felt different as I packed away Lorraine's carefully curated family photos. Each frame held perfectly posed smiles, a museum of manufactured happiness that had dominated these walls for decades. "Leave that one," Evelyn said, pointing to a dusty frame I'd nearly missed. It showed a younger Lorraine, unguarded, laughing with Robert at some forgotten moment. Sometimes it's worth remembering people as they were, not as they became. The sentencing hearing had been brief. Lorraine sat straight-backed in her orange jumpsuit, pride intact even as the judge read out her crimes. When offered a chance to speak, she'd looked directly at me. "I'm not sorry for protecting what I built," she'd said. "But I am sorry for what I destroyed in the process." Now, as I carefully wrapped the photo in tissue paper, Daniel appeared in the doorway. Marcus called. "The board approved the restructuring plan. We're reinstating everyone who was forced out under Mom's leadership." "Including me?" I asked, managing a small smile. He crossed the room, pulled me close. "Especially you. Though I hear the new CEO's wife might face accusations of favoritism." "Let them talk." I leaned into him. "We've survived worse rumors." Robert cleared his throat from the hallway. "If you're finished with the photos, there's something else." He held out an envelope, cream-colored, but this time bearing Lorraine's prison return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in her precise handwriting. "The combination to my private safe is Daniel's birthday. Inside you'll find everything. The real records, the names of everyone I hurt, the truths I buried. Use them wisely. And Vivian, thank you for breaking my perfect prison before it destroyed us all." My hands trembled as I read it again. "Why now?" "Because sometimes," Evelyn said softly, "the greatest act of love is admitting you were wrong." The doorbell rang. Marcus, arriving for our first official board meeting as the new leadership team. But before we left, I had one last thing to do. In the kitchen, I opened the cookbook Lorraine had never let anyone touch. Inside, hidden between pages of unused recipes, I found what I expected. More letters, more secrets, more weapons she'd planned to use. "What should we do with them?" Daniel asked. I carried them to the fireplace, where Robert had already started a small blaze. One by one, I fed the letters to the flames. "Some stories don't need to be told," I said. "Some battles don't need to be won." Speaking of battles, Marcus called from the doorway, waving his phone. "You might want to see this." The message was from my old marketing firm. "Time to come home? Your office is waiting." I looked around at my unlikely family. Daniel's strength, Robert's redemption, Evelyn's wisdom, Marcus's loyalty. At the spaces where Lorraine's control had once suffocated us all, now filled with something harder to name but stronger to hold. "I am home," I said, and deleted the message. Later, as we gathered around the dining table, no perfect place settings, no artificial conversations, Evelyn brought out a cake. Not elaborate or expertly decorated, but real. Honest. To new beginnings, Robert proposed, raising his glass. To truth, Daniel added. To family, I said, meeting Evelyn's knowing smile. The kind we choose to be. As we cut into the cake, I noticed the empty chair at the end of the table. It would always be there. That space where Lorraine had ruled her perfect kingdom. But now it stood as a reminder. Not of what we'd lost, but of what we'd found in its place. The late afternoon sun caught the dusty photo I'd left unpacked, making Lorraine's young, genuine laugh shine like a message from a different time. Some prisons, I realized, lock from the inside. And sometimes the key to freedom isn't revenge or justice, but simply the courage to be imperfectly, unashamedly real.